This video is titled Africa is the Land of Hope. I wish that all of you are going to listen to this video and like, comment and subscribe. Give me your ideas and tell us why you think Africa is the land of hope. Now, I am going to start by talking about the most recent annals of African history, and the farthest sources of history I need to go to and I am going to delve to is the history of Africa starting from the 1800s, because that is the period of history that has today yielded the Africa we see today. But of course, in truth, Africa's history predates that period and it is longer than probably any other single continent, leave alone Asia, which may predate us. But really, every time ancient history, medieval history has been mentioned, Africa has been at the helm of things. Think about Kush, think about Egypt, think about the great kingdoms in Western Africa. Even though in recent history, but they have always been there. Africa has always been there. But then, let's go directly to the gist of the matter. Where is Africa's position today in the world in relation to the last 2 centuries? Now, Africa today begins from the point of history where a lot of African kingdoms were struggling to create something of themselves. They were struggling to modernize. While majority of Europe had just come up very strongly from the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, because those were the two basically most important historical empires that shaped majority of Europe and Asia. So they had just collapsed and they had separated into these hundreds of kingdoms that were struggling to modernize to get power. But Africa was still the same ancient history that it always was, strong, proud, and standing strong in all her splendor and glory. And then came the modernists, the Europeans who were struggling between each other, and they were looking for a source of hope for their falling kingdoms. The kingdoms had practically become useless. Their resources had become depleted. There was nothing to drive their industries. There was nothing to fund their own countries. And this was a source of despair for majority of them. They didn't have hope for their industries, and that is why they needed, number one, they needed labor, they needed sources of raw materials, they needed capital to keep growing their economies, and there was nowhere else, because majority of the money they had used in wars and all that kinds of shenanigans, they had depleted a lot of their resources in funding wars and in funding all kinds of crazy stuff, and now they were on a decline. They needed a source of hope. There was no hope on their continent, and that is why the Americas came to Africa, and that is where I'm going to start, with Africa giving hope to the world. So the Americas had gone through a period of industrialization. There were industries coming out everywhere. There were large farms that needed to be worked. But they didn't have the kind of machinery or the kind of power to run their industries. And so they decided to run into Western Africa, where there was a group of people called the children of Israel, who had been set for slavery because they had rebelled against their gods. And when they went there, they took them and enslaved them and sent them working on their farms, on their industries, on each and every single relics that they were constructing, every single engineering feat they were making. There were Africans who were doing the real work. And when I see America great as she is today, I look at the larger population of America, and who are they? The Negroes. So who really made America? Was it the Rothschilds and their purported banking wizardry? In reality, no. It was Africa exploited by these unscrupulous businessmen who took her children and fed her scraps. But the funniest thing is that her children, even out of her very own belly, they never lost hope. In the Americas, where they were slaves, they were able to overcome all kinds of challenges because the God of Africa is a shining ray of hope. And today, they stand free in their country, in that foreign country which they were able to own and make a home of it. And today, we can all be happy and see them and say, those are our long lost brothers from Mother Africa, and they are living a hopeful life. Majority of them, I cannot say that they are living the fullness of life that we would have desired for our mother and her children, but they are alive. They are going on. They are keeping on from the bondages of slavery to freedom and to creating something of themselves. Africa has always been hopeful. And when slave trade was getting to decline, they had depleted their sources of raw materials. And Africa, again, they raided. And when they came to Africa, they took our gold, they took our resources, our spices, they took our diamonds, they took our copper, they took our iron, they took our cobalt, and any other single mineral that you want to think about, they took to their growing industries because there was no hope in their own industries. And then their industries needed something more. Their population was growing, and yet their lands could not support their populations. Their tobacco could not support their population. Their coffee could not support their population. Their tea could not support their population. And back to Africa, they came with their crops of tea, coffee, cocoa, and all other manner of crops. And they planted in Africa because they knew that Mama Africa was the only one who could feed the bellies of their humongous industries. And they enslaved our forefathers in their very own lands. But Africa has always been a hardy tree. Come rain, come sunshine, it glows, it grows. Our forefathers were enslaved in their very lands. They were imprisoned, they were embattled, they were treated like trash in their very homes. But they did not lose hope. They fought hard, they continued to move, and they looked and were hopeful. And they knew that one day they were going to come out of this cocoon. And that is why some of them decided to go take up arms. Like in South Africa, when they decided it was Umkhonto we Sizwe. Kenya, where they decided it is the Mau Mau way. Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Havlerimo. Western Africa and all their struggles. Raped and ravished as she was, Mother Africa was still hopeful, and she knew that she was going to break the yokes of bondage and colonization. And yet, trouble has always been a large portion of Africa's plate. Because after the advent of the leaving of the colonizers came the advent of the neo-colonialists, sons and daughters who did not love their motherland, but they ravished and raped her mercilessly, senselessly. Presidents who were not residents of their country, they were living like kings while their kingsmen were living like paupers. They stole and destroyed. They killed and maimed their brothers and sisters, their cousins and village men. Whether they called it coup d'etats, whether they called it tribal wars, whether it was corruption or whatever they did with impunity. And today we continue with that crop of leaders who are not only Satanists, worshipping the gods they learned to worship from the Europeans. Majority of them pretend to be people-oriented, development-oriented, but they are not. In fact, majority are sheep's clothed wolves. They smile and laugh with us in the day, and then stab us on our backs in the darkness of night. And yet, we must always look back and ask ourselves, when all these things are happening, what is our place as a continent? Individually as republics, even though those at the helms of our republics are thieves and marauding gangs, fools and corrupt who rule with impunity. Thieves, I call them, because that is what they do. Satanists. For No true worshipper of Yah will ever cause suffering on his people. If any of them thinks that he is not, let him come out and show us his works and tell us, I have saved my people like King David did from the jaws of poverty and corruption and degradation. I have brought my country from the thrones of poverty and the woes of economic exploitation, and I have brought them to economic prosperity. How I wish Muammar Gaddafi of Libya was alive today, and he would have had the liberty to come chest thumping and say, yes, I am a godly man. I have brought Libya from poverty and made her a queen. Oh, even though her reign was short-lived, she was a queen. How I wish Julius Kabarage Nyerere of Tanzania was alive today, and he could come out and say, yes, you asked for godly men, I am godly. I set the base of the Tanzania, you see. How I wish John Pombe Magufuli was alive. He could have stood out and said, yes. When the saints of politics and leadership in Africa are called, I feel fit to go because I did a good job. But the problem is that majority of the current crop of leaders are our very own sources of suffering. And we have no choices because they are the same coins, just wearing different faces. They're the very, very same hats, white men in black skins. And they destroy our land. They build for themselves mansions, but they do not have the heart of the African people. And yet, the African people, like I said, are a hardy people. They fight on and they move on. We do not cry foul and lose hope and despair. We stand, we fight. Because hope is Mama Africa's. And when we stand together, great things we do, and great things out of us see. The question really is, the world out there is collapsing. Look at Europe. In all her splendor and all her industries and all her money, their countries are on a collapsing rampage. They are on the journeys of collapse. Majority of them, they cannot see the great future like the great past they have been able to boast about. But Africa, we still have the potential. We are like the electrons in physics classes and chemistry classes, which have the potential to react and produce massive amounts of energy. We still have numerous resources. We still have numerous tracts of lands that could produce. They don't have that luxury. They don't have the luxury of the population that we boast about. The only other place that comes close is Asia. India, for example, they come close to us. But even them, they don't exactly tarry to us. We have the population, the youngest group of youths, the power, Sometimes when I think about Africa, I see the raw power that is shielded by our young men and our children. And I know that Africa should face the future with hope. I know majority of us almost feel like losing hope because we do not know what to do with our leaders and who to put in our governments anymore. But let us not ever lose hope in our continent and in our mother. But as she may seem ravaged as she may have been, let us look at her with hope and with love and understand that she, although a troubled woman, she has been able to withstand all and given hope to her children. And we stand like the pearl, a mysterious pearl in the world, where when they try to understand us, they cannot. Because even though they have stolen from us, from our children, to our resources, we still boast of innumerable resources. And we still have the potential to make something of ourselves. All we need is to come together and start saying no. And when we start saying no, we say no to corruption, we say no to thieving leaders, we say no to these Satanists and say that we want men who have our very interests. Because the Bible says that to love people is to love God. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that is the kind of leaders we need. We need to oust majority of this crop of despots who have nothing called interest in their people. And that way, our hope will materialize into will, and our will materialize into greatness, and our greatness will amaze the entire world, and they will come looking for Africa and wondering in her mythical beauty. Africa is a beauty, and so she shall always remain. Hope is her second name, and hope we must clothe ourselves in. We must never lose hope despite our situations. Whether we struggle economically or financially or in whatever other aspect that we struggle politically, even socially, we must never lose hope. We must take in the footsteps of our forefathers who never lost hope but trudged on and fought throughout all their lives to keep the lamp of Mama Africa glowing. And together, I know that we can all do it. I wish you all the best, and I wish you hope. I wish you more love for your continent and your countries and your black skins. I wish you more love for them, and I wish that we shall see the fruition of our hope. For the Bible says, do not lose hope, but trust in God. And the God of Africa is an awesome God. He is going to keep us, and He is going to win this battle for us. I wish you all the best. This is Kenyan Opinion TV. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to keep hope. Kwaheri.